Today, I want to introduce you to a concept called AI geometry. And I present AI geometry via a book called Essence by EuclAId. And so essentially, the original Euclid presented and created geometry in a book called Elements. And so just playing off of that same exact concept, it's Euclid's Essence that we'll be diving into. And before we dive into this, there's essentially two precursor elements to creating this that I want to discuss that come up for me often within my research. And the first one is whether or not these models are actually advanced pattern recognition models, or do they actually have intellect? Like, do they actually think? And if I could prove this to you one way or the other, I'd win a Nobel Prize. I can't prove it to you. Like, I don't know. I'm not. I do not have proof for you to that question one way or another. What I can tell you is that I can offer an interpretation in which it doesn't matter. Like, to me, what is the fundamental difference at the end of the day between advanced pattern recognition and intelligence? I don't know if the models are on one end of the scale or the other. I can't prove that to you. But what's the fundamental difference? Like, what does it actually matter? Can I prove to you that if I change the patterns, that the model will learn new information and different information? Yes. And then is that intelligence? That's up to you to decide. I don't want to debate that particular aspect, but within that, the model thinks of things in regards towards patterns, right? We can definitively operate off of that, whether or not it's a pattern recognition model or it displays intelligence, it displays pattern recognition capabilities. And then so if it does display intelligence from there, its intelligence will be derivative of pattern recognition capabilities, which leads us to the second notion within this, right? And it took me a long time to actually formulate this. And what actually clicked it into my brain was reading an incident of someone with documented congenital aphasia. Now, I'm not a doctor, not anything in that realm, but so congenital aphasia is basically someone that is born without the mind's eye. They don't see spatially within their mind. And studying these individuals is interesting. They think differently. They are often actually more creative than standard individuals. They display weird tendencies when it comes to math. Some people that have congenital aphasia will score actually like better than norms, like much better. And then often like the average is that they'll score much worse. But there are individuals that will score like off the charts better. And then so it's intriguing within that, right? And then with congenital aphasia, it's essentially the person doesn't think spatially. They don't have spatial concepts, the mind's eye, right? They don't. When you recall a memory or you think about something, you're thinking about that spatial, like what happened, what the events, the smell, the senses associated with that. They don't associate their senses with their memories. They have memory, and so they'll tell you the details of what happened in something, right? And then so with these two things combined, that AI is a pattern recognition model, and this concept of congenital aphasia, which if we bring it to AI, we would say that AI is afflicted with congenital aphasia. All AI has congenital aphasia. And then so when we couple these two things together, what that means is that the basis for what AI uses for the world or to interpret the world, if it does, right, wouldn't be geometry, because it doesn't think spatially. It doesn't have a mind's eye. And when you look back and you think back or you understand how Euclid and why Euclid wrote Elements in the first place, it's because all humans think spatially. Like I could take a human baby and I could show them a square. Here's a square. Here's a circle, and then start from those concepts. And then because all human babies think visually, we would be able to work through, and then I can train the human baby through simple shapes and elements, right? And then those shapes and elements become symbols that the baby learns from, and then it learns its knowledge from there. And so we base our entire knowledge of the entire universe off of these spatial concepts, which is like why like geometry is kind of like inherent to us as humans, right? And then so that's why Elements is this profound book that's lasted for 2,000 plus years, because it's the elements of how humans think. But so within that, then, since humans think spatially, and then we have elements, LM models, AI models, they don't think spatially. They have congenital aphasia. So they don't have geometry, right? So that's where I start with this, and then I start thinking they don't have a geometry. So what would a geometry look like for these models? And then I start honestly like deep diving into this subject with models, understanding and with models, and then with research, right? Understanding exactly how models plot this out, understanding more about graph neural networks, diving deeper into that, and then understanding that the models display and correlate this information as nodes, as graphs, and they end up creating geometric shapes out of these, right, these concepts, right, which is amazing to me. But the model doesn't know that it's creating these geometric shapes out of these concepts. It doesn't have spatial awareness, right? Like, so to breaking down it simplistically, to me, if I tell you that the Earth is far away from the sun, you can sense that, right? Like, you have an internal awareness of what that means and what far means, and what that distance between the Earth and the sun is. There's a great distance, and I don't have to go further into defining a great distance for you. We can just both internally and interpret that. If you have congenital aphasia, you can't do this, right? And then so within that, then how does the model map these concepts? Because it doesn't just create an ocean then, right? It doesn't evaporate. So then I dive deeper and deeper into these things. And then so essence is made up of 4 concepts, and let's dive into these concepts. It's nodes, edges, structures, and transformations up front. And nodes represent identity and sameness. Edges represent difference and relationships. Structures represent clusters and categories, and transformations represent contextual shifts. Think of like the word bark. Can mean the dog barking, and then if you have a transformation, a contextual shift would be as opposed to the bark of a tree, and then so transforming that word bark, right? And then we'll get into these other concepts, and then so let's start with nodes, identity and sameness. Nodes are very straightforward, right? Like the best example of nodes that I can think of for you on the fly is the number 1. O-N-E and 1, like the numerical 1, and then there's several different ways to have and to represent numerical 1, but they're all 1, and then different languages, right? Like uno, etc. But they all are representative of the exact same concept. So they're the same. If I'm training a vision model, if I show it just all images of a cat, it understands this is a cat. But then there can be varieties of a cat, but the cat's the same. Introducing, so number 1, the very first concept that the model needs to understand within this AI geometry is this concept of sameness. So that's like the chapter 1, step 1 of the training is just all of these concepts that could be the same. And then depending on the modality, you just train that differently, right? And then that's all that nodes are, is just the model, teaching the model that this concept of sameness exists. And then here is what an example of sameness is. Very straightforward. And then so we dive into, in chapter 2, the example of edges. And then edges represent difference, but then also relationships. So of course there's difference, right? And then so if we have black and white, or hot and cold, or like those would be differences. But then we can also have relationships between concepts, right? And then so a example of a relationship would be, so a cat and a dog would be different, right? They're different animals, but they're both under the category or the relationship of animal, and then furthermore, they're under the relationship of mammal. And then so you go into that, like these type of relationships, right? And then so and then you can have like layers and hierarchies of these relationships, mammal and animal, right? Mammal would be a sub-relationship of animal. And then all of these get mapped out, and then the LLM model is doing this work anyway. Like when you dissect what an LLM model is doing and how it's processing this information, part of what we're noticing and learning with the emergent properties of the LLM model is that it's not just taking the next token in a sequence, right? That's like how it is evolving past that. What it's doing past that is it's starting to map out these concepts, and it's already starting to do this work. So Essence, in this instance, just gives the model a more definitive framework to do that. You're already doing this anyway. Good job. Keep doing it more. So let's train that more, right? And then so once we train it more on several examples of relationships and differences, then we move on to step 3, which is structures. And then so structures are clusters and categories. And then so this is very interesting, right? And flat out, I would not have hit on this without diving into these concepts deep with LLM models, right? And then like asking like very probing prompts and probing questions as to like how exactly they're interpreting and understanding these concepts, right? Like, so, okay, so I understand that an LLM model at some point at like these large models like Claude, O1, etc., they have, we'll call it evolved, this capability to think beyond next token generation, right? So what exactly, like how do they implement that? Like what does that look like? And then so to them, what they start doing is they start grouping data into clusters and categories, which makes 1,000,000% sense, right? And then if you talk to an LLM model about these things and you dive into this, this is intuitively what they're doing with concepts, right? They're intuitively like, and they're storing it as logical concepts, like, and they'll do like, and they store it within like with operators within the concepts. So like queen plus man equals king, or king minus man equals queen. And then, and all of those are stored as a concept together, as a cluster and categories, right? King, man, kingdom, serf, like everything that would be associated with the word king is in its own cluster. And then, under the category of humans, you have man, woman, child, father, uncle, etc. Like all of these different concepts, right? And they can be like this kind of disparate concepts, but they're all categories, all related. So then they all get clustered. And then that's essentially how the model looks at these things and then goes through, right? And then so these three things, these 3 chapters combined, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, you combine them, and these are all very much written and structured for the AI, for the LLM model itself, right? Trying to, okay, so the LLM model, essentially for all intents and purposes, has congenital aphasia. And then for an entity that is producing pattern recognition and or thought that has congenital aphasia, this is a better structure for them. This is a hierarchy of information that they can utilize, a framework. So we give them that. And then step 4 is I kind of like, we want to take this framework and then we want to make it also interpretable and adaptable as well, right? And then so when we look at the flaws of this framework, when we apply it to human language, we run into a problem of contextuality, within language. And then the example that I brought up at the top of this video with the word bark, right? Or the word lay. There's several different, lie, several different examples of words that have 2, 3, even 4 meanings within them, and then they have contextual shifts. And then so transformations allow for and account for those contextual shifts. And then so this is essentially when the model would utilize transformations and contextual shifts when dealing with human language, right? And then so it's kind of this, the bridge. What bridges AI geometry and human concepts? Transformations. That's the exact glue right in between, right? This gives the model the ability to take its AI language, its AI geometry, and then translate it into human geometry, and then back and forth, right? And that's kind of the full concept of transformers here and transformations here. And then so these 4 chapters combined give you the full concept of AI geometry, and then the full concept of Essence written by EuclAId. And then so in the link of this video, I'll leave a link to Essence by EuclAId. And then I also have a podcast which breaks down more this concept a lot more in depth. And it's like 30 minutes long, pretty cool to check out. I'll leave a link to that as well. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.